Acharya is a serial entrepreneur, columnist, poet, and a charismatic speaker. As the founder and CEO of Mapmygenome, she introduced the concept of personal genomics in India with the launch of Genome Patri in 2013. She co-founded and pioneered her first venture, Osimum Biosolutions, from 2000 to 2013 through innovative bioinformatics and LIMS Solutions Global Acquisitions Awards and fundraisers. Honored with She is 75 Women in STEAM, WTI Award Niti Aayog, Woman Entrepreneur of the Year Award 2022 Indian Express, Women Entrepreneur of the Year Award Z Business, Special Recognition Leaders Category Award by Indian Express, Pride of Telangana Award 2018, IIT Kharagpur Distinguished Alumnus Award, Young Leaders Forum of British High Commission, Young Global Leader of World Economic Forum Class of 2011. At present, she serves on governing bodies of NIBMG, IIT Hyderabad, and WeHub. She's also at the advisory board at Action for India and KIIT, board of members of Mentors for IV Ventures, member of CII National Committee on Biotechnology, committee member of HIMSS Pacific Indian Chapter, NASCOM Executive Council member. Welcome, Anu. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation and coming on this very, very special 50th episode of Eclectica, the Different News. And thank you so much for giving time in spite of your extensive busy schedule. I welcome you, and I think we'll have a fantastic chat.
Thank you, Dr. Gargi. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. So, Anu, I think in today's date, when we talk about genomics, it has become kind of boom. Globally, it was there, but I think in India, it's a very good time when we are seeing the fruits of genomics, to be very honest. And when it comes to genomics, your name definitely comes to every enthusiast's mind. And so with that thing in mind, I would like to ask my first question to you is about your organization, that is Mapmygenome. So what exactly inspired you to start Mapmygenome altogether?
Sure. So my journey in genomics has been a relatively long one, pretty much the same time as the human genome itself, right? So around the year 2000 was when we started the first company called Osimum Bio. And this was a company where we did genomics, but it was mostly bioinformatics and a lot of, eventually we did manufacturing of oligonucleotides, microarrays, and we also started doing a lot of submissions, whether it was to the US FDA or others. So in many ways, we sort of were, with the start of the human genome and continued to do that. And Osimum was more a global company, and we had done 3 international acquisitions. We were, one of the largest in this space worldwide. But I think one of the things that really bothered me was that, as we move towards precision medicine, I think we need data that is of Indian origin, because we are about 1/6 of the world's population. But if you look at the actual data that was there, data sets that are actually contributing in terms of research, I think that was very less. That was where, we felt that given that our extensive background in genomics, I think we would be the right company to be able to actually bring out something to the consumer and to the physician, something that would be easy, affordable, and also something that they can use and also ultimately be, contributing back. That is how we got started. And that was back in 2013. So almost a decade now since we started Mapmygenome.
True. It's a fantastic thing, and I think now everybody knows about Mapmygenome who have tried at least genetic testing for any reason, and I have personally taken up your tests as well for my family members. So it is fantastic information that we get out of it. Anu, coming to the genomics boom that has happened now, many companies have come up and we talk about precision medicine, but I have a question in mind. Like since I am an educationist, I am an enthusiast for education. So, in that context, as an expert in the field like you, I would like to know, do you really think that still there is need to create education around this technology, awareness around this technology, particularly both ways, both for the general public as well as for the healthcare professionals? I think that's the two A to B points that all these technologies are trying to connect. So, I will really appreciate your opinion about on this.
No, absolutely. I think education and awareness is the cornerstone for any new technology to really grow, right? And like I mentioned, it's a relatively new area from the time 22 years. Pretty much we started riding that whole genomics phase. So it's not been that long, even though for a lot of people 22 years might seem a lot. I think it is not in the larger context of things, right? So a lot of the medical professionals today are not even have probably graduated before the human genome was completed, and we started seeing the real clinical applications of that only much later, right? Or mostly over the last decade or 12 or 15 years, right? It was not even been 20 years. So a lot of them have not been educated about this in MBBS, and I think you will know that better. That maybe I don't know if in your times whether that was part of the genetics was part of the coursework, but in most cases it's not, right?
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of medical professionals, they are actually learning on the job because they're getting patients, and then patients are asking for something like this. They end up taking additional courses or certifications to be able to actually compete in this, in being able to have the right kind of background in this space. So I think definitely, I think that's an area that needs, a lot of like the awareness is necessary, and we've been doing that. Right? For us now, we see that over the last 10 years, a lot has changed. I mean, we are seeing that a lot of doctors are now excited about genomics, not just for diagnosing a patient or for looking at it from a pharmacogenomics point of view, but also I think on the preventive health side as well.
Correct.
I think we have seen a change, but I think it is still a small percentage of the medical professionals who have been able to actually make that leap towards the genomic side. And I think over the next few years, we'll start seeing a lot more. And this time, I think the growth is going to be a lot more exponential because we've reached that point where there is a critical mass of patients who have either benefited and a critical mass of patients who are aware of some of these. So I think we need education for sure. I think, and that's when it will become a much more standard clinical care for everybody, right? So you need it in the medical textbooks. You need it as easy to understand reports. You need to make sure that it is something that is easily available and accessible in terms of sample collection as well. So if you look at smaller towns and villages, that is another thing that you create the awareness. A lot of people still don't know that a lot of our tests can just be shipped, right? So we started this whole campaign saying "Har Ghar DNA" so that people understand that we'll actually be there in their homes rather than them having to come to us. So I think definitely I think awareness is a big area along with the other accessibility and affordability that comes with it as well.
Thank you, Anu, for that insightful explanation. Well, when you said sample collection, I do agree. So, you have been in the market, you have been serving a lot of customers from different areas, from different economic backgrounds with Mapmygenome. So, in this way, what was your experience, or how did you find the acceptance of the sample collection? Like, what kind of samples people are preferring more to give, even like when you ask them to test for themselves?
So I think the most currently we find that the swab collection or the saliva is the easiest, right? And it is easy to transfer that from one location to the other. And you are not poking anybody, right? So the
Right.
swab of all the samples is the easiest because even with saliva, sometimes you have to spend some time in drooling and getting it out. But if you're just taking just the buccal swab, it's the easiest. So from a yield point of view, I think that part is good, where you're getting some amount of saliva in and the buccal cells in that in as a DNA collection. The blood is preferred in places where they're already giving blood for something else, right? So if they are doing a health check,
Right.
they're already giving blood for, let's say, HbA1c and a lipid profile and all of that, then they would rather get 1 extra ml for a genetic profile as well. But that's what we are seeing, that in cases where they're already doing that, it's not a problem. In cases where it's far away, for instance, in a small town in, let's say, West Bengal, or let's say in Jammu and Kashmir or somewhere, it's much easier to ship out a box where they can collect their sample themselves and send it back. So that's what we are finding. Of course, these are the three main things we do, and also for cancer patients, of course, we do a lot of tissues and FFP blocks and other such samples as well. So those are what is necessary for that particular type of diagnosis.
Right. So, Anu, can you tell us about when it comes to diagnostics, or like as you mentioned, cancer? So, when it comes to diagnostics, so what kind of genomic or genetic tests are performed, or rather, I would say that, say for example, I am a clinician. So, say I get a patient who has a pre-malignant oral cancer, maybe, or a head and neck cancer, or a patient who is in a kind of advanced stage where we need to do some decision making. So in these two kind of scenarios, what kind of tests would be advisable, where the healthcare professional could actually suggest to their patients for their benefit, or rather more precise understanding of the diagnosis as well as decision making on the treatment part, because that is very important in this kind of debilitating diseases.
So there's two parts, right? One part is where you are actually looking at hereditary markers that are there. So in some cases, some of the chemotherapy drugs and others, you can actually look at even the hereditary markers, in which case you can take blood samples to be able to do it. The other is where you are looking at actual tissue blocks, or you're looking at specific blocks or from that specific location. In that case, we would run what we call as a somatic analysis. Right? So you take the tissue sample, you'll extract the DNA, but you'll have to now do it in a much more deeper analysis, because you want to find those driver mutations that are creating this thing, or you want to find something. So normally, when you're doing a cancer diagnosis, you would typically be doing it on a higher depth than you would normally do with like a regular exome sequencing or a microarray or anything else. So what we would suggest is, depending on the case, and every case is slightly different. I think if, let's say, it's somebody who has is just trying to understand if a certain chemotherapy drug works for them or not, sometimes it's a hereditary thing. You can just look at the PGX profile from there. Otherwise, you'll have to look at a tumor profile and be able to understand what treatment options are there for that particular person. So I think oncology is now even finding much more widespread use in terms of looking at even blood for looking for cell-free DNA and being able to do it. There are also some circulating tumor cells. But even in the cases of tumor, in the cases of cancer, we find that other than doing like a exome sequencing or looking at certain copy number variations or otherwise, we are also finding the use of, let's say, a tumor mutation or a microsatellite instability, because they're in combination, they're able to find out what kind of treatment options are there for them. So I can't generalize, but I'm saying that those are some of the kinds of tests that we find for cancer patients.
Okay, that is fantastic to know from you, because I think it gives a lot of clarity to, at least I got a lot of clarity, as well as I think all our audience who is listening to us, they will also know about all these things. And Anu, now this industry is growing a lot, like as you said, and it's I mean the future is near, very near, and maybe we have already stepped into the future. This is a starting point. So in this case, I would really like to understand from you that what is the job opportunity or job market looks like for the young people, the freshers from different fields, like if they come up and they are interested in to make a career in genomics. So is it like it is only restricted to a certain population of education, I mean people who are educated in a certain way, or it is something where many different people can come in and join hands. What is your take on this?
Absolutely. I think you need many types of people in genomics, right? You can't just, it's not yet a field which is like, it's not like physics
Yeah.
where you have a clearly defined, this is what you do. But even in physics, I think we end up doing a lot of math and chemistry and many other things. Right?
True.
But still, I think physics, for instance, has been around for hundreds of years, as opposed to genomics, which is new. Now, genomics also needs a lot of domain expertise from other areas. So, for instance, we have people on staff that are medical doctors. We
Right.
have some molecular biologists. We have statisticians. We have people who are genetic counselors. We have people who are programmers. We have people who are, are lab scientists, and we have people who are, collecting samples. We have people who are running the samples. So there are many different types of people that we need. So it is a cross-functional, a multi-domain expertise is required because you are trying to help the healthcare industry, but it's not just healthcare, right? I think one of the things about genomics is that you can actually use it as a base for other industries, allied industries as well. Whether it is nutrition, whether it is fitness, whether it is in terms of looking at even cosmetics so you can name it because this is basically your own software, if you will, and that's some of it is not going to change, some of it will change over a period of time. So I think it's an important piece to understand, and you have to also understand that if you do look at genomics as a career option, then it might not be a bad idea to specialize in a particular area. Let's say you're looking at statistics. That's a huge area in demand, for instance. But you can also look at it from from a genomics lens, if you will, right? The second option is, let's say, if you want to become a genetic counselor, there's massive opportunity in that area because there are not that many people who are qualified to be able to interpret some of these reports, and so every hospital will need them, every company like us will need multiple of them, and so there is going to be a big growth in some of those areas as well. And then, of course, there is always a need for clinical geneticists, molecular biologists, medical professionals, all of who will ultimately either start using these tools because genomics is not a field by itself. Right? You're using it to change something else in that
Correct.
process.
Correct.
I
Correct.
think the opportunities are vast. I think it depends on where that individual's interest really lies, rather than it being a individual like rather than it being a straitjacketed specific kind of a role that you can play in genomics.
Thank you, Anu. I think this information will be really helpful because there are certain myths and facts that runs about education in genomics or career in genomics. What we understand from you now that anybody who is enthusiastic about this field, they can place a foot and they can understand genomics and they can get into the industry and make a career in it. Well, when we are talking with you, and when I'm talking with you, and we are still not, we have not passed the pandemic. We are still somewhere here and there. I mean, it's a part of life now. But then, what are the challenges you faced, and how did you deal with when COVID happened? Because I think you have done extensive work at that time, and we have seen testing centers here and there, so we all know about it. So, but then when you are here today, so I'll really like to know how exactly you dealt with this very vicious situation.
So I think there were two aspects to it, right? One was a personal view in terms of how I felt the pandemic was, and the second was how how we as Mapmygenome really dealt with that situation. Now, when the pandemic first came in, I think it was the first time that you didn't have to travel, you didn't have to do anything. You were sitting at home. It was great, absolutely fantastic in the beginning, right? Like you are for the first time you actually find time to do many other things. So
Exactly.
I started doing a lot of stuff, whether it was writing, whether it was getting and other bad habits like baking and all that, right? Now, once you do that, one of the things we realized was that at Mapmygenome, we didn't have that much of a time really from as to sit at home, because immediately got into trying to get a certification and an NABL certification for Mapmygenome. And I'll tell you how that actually happened for us. I think for us it was more that in the beginning we felt that there was 20 years of having been in genomics and having PCRs and dealing with all of that for many years. So I thought that there were many groups formed at that time, and many COVID groups, everybody trying to play a role in helping out in the situation.
Right.
And for me, it was initially just that, right? You're trying to help out, and I got involved in quite a few groups. And in some groups, for instance, we started getting involved with some of the state governments, trying to do projects for them and all of that. That's how we got started. And then we said we have all of this equipment, but because it was COVID, you had to get certified to be able to use some of these things. So we started doing that. Then we started working with companies, because companies wanted to get access to their employees being coming on a regular basis. So we started doing corporate testing, and then we started offering it to the average consumer. Right? And what was interesting was that during COVID, getting anything was tough, right? I mean, you couldn't. But we were able to figure out, there were people, I think police was trying to keep people out of the streets, so they were not letting our employees come in. So all the fun things happened, you know. But I think eventually, I think we were able to, not just create the right, you know, testing centers. We had almost 500 people walking up to us on a day, in a single day. Right? So we were scaled up very quickly. We built up a 24-hour support team, and we continued to keep that for since then. So I think some of the great things from the pandemic that we got. And then we also realized that we were able to then use that opportunity to use it to do some analysis for our clients. So we came up with the genome patri immunity as well.
Right.
So when I look at a problem, I look at also a possible opportunity that you can get out of it. So clearly, it was something that was devastating. COVID was not the easiest of things for everyone. A lot of people, whether it was employees or otherwise. But I think at the same time, I think having been in the field for a long time, I think we started with intentions to just help out, and I think in some ways also help our business. In many ways, we ended up being the testing partner in the Hyderabad airport. And we continue to do that, and we also expanded labs to Delhi and Bangalore and so on. So I think in some ways, I think we use the time to really scale up and build up our business.
That is very inspiring, and that's why I asked you this question, because when it just caught my eye in one of the airports when I visited. Then I was, oh, Anu is here as well. So that's really nice. And yeah, I think it was a difficult time for everyone. Yeah, that human beings are most adaptive species, so we are adapting to everything. Anu, I think you have been always an inspiration, and people like me always look up to you, because the way you have taken things forward, it is really, really it is awesome. Actually, it is very, very inspiring. And I would like you to give your message to young entrepreneurs or people who are not only coming for making a career in genomics, rather if somebody is thinking that they will start their journey as an entrepreneur. So what would be your message to them?
I think first and foremost is to find a subject that you're deeply passionate about, right? Because entrepreneurship is not an easy journey, and I think you know that as well. But but if you do something that you love, and I think like you've done, you started this passion project of, you've taken it to 50 episodes already, right? And I think you're doing it because you love it, right?
Yes.
At least that's what I get to see, right? There's a lot of hard work, but also a lot of passion that goes into building anything that is sustainable, that's long term, and so on. So one is that continue to keep up with the passion, like find something that excites you. But second is do it if it's something you can do long term. It's not something there are some things I like to do for short term. You cook for 3 days and then you forget about it, and then move on to the next thing, right? But
Right.
but genomics is something I've done for 22 years, and I think I can continue in that space for longer because it's an evolving field. So in my case, the fact that the field itself is changing, there's always something new that's intellectually stimulating. I think is something that excites me. But there are people for whom different things will excite them, right? And
Mm.
which is why we have so many different kinds of businesses. So I think first they have to find what excites them. Second is to make sure that you put in that extra mile and that extra bit of passion to make it successful. And the third is that it's not going to be easy. So make sure that you also have a network of people that you can rely on.
Right.
And I think that's a very important part that for a lot of entrepreneurs, it will be a journey that's going to be a little lonely if you did not actually have real friends along the way. So I think that's an important thing: getting friends, getting mentors, getting a good board, and making sure that you enjoy the journey as much as you enjoy in just building the business as well. So that's what I would do, and that's hopefully what others do as well. But everybody's journey is different.
Right. Thank you, Anu, for this message, and I think we are all inspired. And thank you so much for being on my show. And I think I will catch you in again in sometime in the future to talk about something. But before I finish this, I would like to ask you the last question. So, because you have been particularly with Mapmygenome, it's a pioneering company, which at least as far as my knowledge goes. So, in that case, what are your future prospects, or what is the future that you are looking forward with Mapmygenome? What new things are you thinking to give back to the society?
So there are quite a few things that we have already been doing. So part of it is research, and maybe I can explain to you some of the interesting research activities that we've just started. But in terms of when we started with products like Genome Patri, which is more on
Yes.
the preventive wellness sort of perspective. Then we added to it like other things like cardiomap, oncomap, and different kinds of things, but mostly around the preventive health. Then we launched Medica Map, which is more. I recently launched Medica Map, which is more like 165 drugs that you can do at a low cost. So you can look at a pharmacogenomics profile for an individual at a very low cost and very easy to understand report.
Right.
We also started doing a lot of clinical testing, which was more like looking at oncology testing, where you look at tissue samples. We're looking at other clinical parameters. Whether it is, we created our own panel called DNA OncoNext, where we did a small panel so that it's easier to be able to sequence that at a higher depth and be able to create it at a low cost. Right?
Mhm.
So those are the things that we did more on the product side. But we've also done where we are now trying to combine different data types. So when you're doing genomics, where you did, let's say, a genome patri,
Mm.
we also started offering blood tests. Now that's something which we did not do earlier. We started offering blood tests, and the primary reason for that was that we want to get different data that is coming from blood, from a lifestyle, from genomics, and putting all of that using machine learning, and we have come up with a score. Right? So that is one thing that is new. The other thing that we are working on right now is to come up with the product in the microbiome space. We're
Excellent.
trying to look at the gut microbiome, oral microbiome, and other microbiomes and be able to do that. So I think eventually there are lots of exciting and new products that we can launch. But I think those are some of the areas that we are currently looking at putting all of those together.
Mhm.
But there are other, uh, from a research point of view, I think one thing that we are finding is that there are many exciting areas that we can look at. So one is longevity.
Mm.
I don't know if you're familiar with our Soul Pal campaign, where we said, let's find people who are 90 plus and be able to then see what the secrets are. Is it in their DNA? Is it their nurture? So that is one research topic that we are currently doing, and we are hoping that we can get at least 1,000 samples, and that would be very exciting. So we've already done quite a few already. I think few hundred we've already collected. So that is one research area we do, topic. The other is on diabetic retinopathy. And then we are doing another one which is on women entrepreneurship. We want to understand if, because in previous publications. I don't know if you've seen that. It said that for men, it was okay even if they didn't have the right genes because the environment was quite conducive. But for women, that is not the case.
Right.
So now we want to understand if that is something that is changed with the lot of the new schemes, the incubators and all that. Has the environment become better, or is it still that you have to have good genes for a woman to succeed, right? And I think those are the kind of things we want to understand, and so lots of exciting new work that can be done. So I can keep going on and on, but I think these are some of the key areas that we are focused on. I think next month we are planning to launch another product. This is called Beauty Map, which will help you understand which beauty products will be appropriate to.
Wow, this is
So,
very interesting.
yeah. So that's currently something that we are soft launching, and we are hoping to do a bigger launch next month.
Excellent. This is something very fascinating to know.
You're the first one to hear that now.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for this information. Thank you. Thank you, Anu. So it was very nice talking to you. And as I say that I'll catch you in future also whenever I can grab you. And thank you so much for your time. And it was wonderful meeting you and talking to you, and particularly on the 50th episode of Eclectica. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me for this special episode. Thank you.